Big budget games with a deep narrative are all well and good, but sometimes you just want to pick up your Switch and shoot people in the face for 10 minutes. And Rico is one of those games. In fact, it may be the perfect game to fulfill those quick grabs of action whilst you're on a short commute or standing in the kitchen watching your dinner burn. It's not without a few niggles though, so allow me to tell all as I review Rico for the Nintendo Switch. Now the premise for Rico is laid out in a pretty decent opening cutscene, as you're told the fictional American city of San Amaro is losing the fight with the gang lords and drug barons. Your new boss, the very British Karen Redfern, explains she assigned you to this new task force called Rico, and your job is to do what the police can't, and that's clean the streets up. It's short, to the point, and at least gives the action some context, but that's where any story ends. You never get any further follow-up than that, and in fact it doesn't really matter which character in the game you choose to be anyway. They don't speak nor have any different abilities or stats. I'm fine with this, to be honest. Space Invaders didn't need a story beyond aliens invading, and Pac-Man didn't need a story beyond eat dots because reasons. Rico is similarly an arcade game at its roots. Although there are a few different modes to choose from, the main action involves your chosen character going from room to room in randomly generated buildings, kicking in each door and killing anything that moves inside, and that's pretty much the entire premise of the game. There is a co-op mode where you and a buddy, either locally or online, can work together to eliminate the bad guys, and if you time your door breaching kicking perfectly, you get a cool slow motion bullet time sequence, allowing you a few precious seconds to get a jump on your targets. I like this as it simulated the element of surprise of two cops breaching a room, so thematically it made sense that the cops get that advantage. If you're playing single player, then the bullet time sequence is used for every room you breach. Now the main game mode in Rico is called the Cases mode, and as you work your way from left to right across a spider's web of a map, choosing your own path on your way to the final showdown with the big boss. Each time you play a case, it's randomly generated, both in terms of the map layout, the locations you have to clear, and the bosses and enemies you have to face. Should you perish on a case, everything that you'd gained so far is lost, and a brand new case is generated for the next run. You do, however, constantly earn XP for pretty much everything you do in the game, and levelling up a character sees permanent traits unlocked that you can then apply to them for any mode going forward. You can only assign 3 traits at any one time though, so there is a little strategic element in picking a good build. The other modes are more focused on quick games, with a single round mode allowing you to set up a quick building clearance, or a mode that I always love to see in arcade games, and that is the daily run. This mode gives every player online the same loadout and building to clear, but you only have one attempt per day to get to the top of the leaderboard. Leaderboards are actually cross-platform, although you can filter by just Nintendo Switch to compare yourself like for like with other players and ignore those nasty mouse and keyboard players on the PC. Well, that's pretty much everything you need to know about Rico, so let's get into some ups and downs before my final thoughts. Now the first up here is quite obvious, it's the art style. This is a really nice looking game. It has cel shaded art that's reminiscent of Borderlands or an old PS2 game called 13, if anyone remembers that. Everything pops off the screen quite nicely. The gun models look good, and whilst there is a lot of repetition in the enemies and some locations, you shouldn't really have time to notice as your focus is on avoiding being killed. The frame rate is generally solid too, with the odd dip here and there, but it doesn't affect the action-packed gameplay. Well, that leads me on nicely to the next up, and that's that the action here is indeed excellent. Running from room to room, sliding through doors whilst firing off your Uzi in slow motion is always an adrenaline rush, and you're never quite sure what you're going to find in each room, which is actually part of the fun. So to keep things interesting, each building you have to clear has some randomly assigned objectives for you to complete, ranging from getting X number of headshots to disarming bombs or destroying servers. Finding these objectives definitely keeps the gameplay interesting, and these tasks are really the glue that hold the game together. With that said, I do have a little down here, and that is that sometimes it is a little bit too easy to get lost in the buildings. You can display a map by awkwardly tapping up on the D-pad, but I didn't find that intuitive, and sometimes in the heat of battle, something like a hint arrow or guidelines on the floor would have been cool, and just help keep the intense action up. There's nothing worse than some brilliantly tense gunfighting and then wandering around dead-end corridors for a minute or two whilst you figure out where to go next. Whilst we're doing the downs, let's get probably the last one out of the way, and that's that the presentation could do with a little bit of a jazz up. The front end menus are pretty clunky to use, and they're obviously set up for PC users, and everything really just lacks that little bit of polish. The biggest issue presentation wise is the lack of music during the game. All of this great action going on should really be set to a thumping soundtrack. You just get these odd moments of silence in the game, which is a bit distracting. Also, be prepared for some quite lengthy load times, especially when you're loading in a new building for the first time. This is a little bit annoying, and hopefully it can be patched. So I'm going to finish off with a couple of more ups, and that is that the gunplay feels really good in this game. That gets a big up. So popping off quick fire shots from your handgun or spraying a room in semi-automatic gunfire never gets old and always feels great. There's a nice kickback to each gun, and each of them have excellent sounds and effects. You also have access to explosives and flashbangs, which work well. And there's also the cliched red barrel in some rooms that when you shoot it, explodes, allowing you to clear large areas in one go. Okay, the final up are the variety of modes in the game. As I mentioned, I love a game with a daily run mode, and whether it draws you in to come back and play every day, or just gives you the knowledge that you can pick this game up and compete against online players and get near instant gratification is great. But for me, I fell in love with the cases mode. I was a bit bummed at first when I realised that nothing carried over from run to run, but I really like the progression system. You earn merit points as you complete objectives, and then you can spend these between each level on new guns, equipment or attachments. You always feel like you're improving in that one isolated case, and I really like that. It won't be a mode that is for everyone, as some people hate these roguelike setups, but for me it's a system that will allow the game to always feel fresh each time I play it. So then, for my summary, like I said at the top, the Switch is the perfect platform for these quick play arcade games. Clearing a building can take anywhere from a few minutes to sort of 10-15 at the most, and you're going to have a heart pumping time every time you play. At around £16 or $20, it's not going to break the bank for the amount of fun it deals out, and the lack of any real story, some slight presentation issues, and the slightly repetitive gameplay aside, Rico should be a game that goes straight into your rotation and takes up residence for the foreseeable future. And I'm going to give Rico on the Nintendo Switch an excellent 8 out of 10. Thanks so much for watching this review, and if you don't already subscribe, please consider subscribing below. It really helps me out. And give the video a thumbs up, and why not drop a comment below as well. We can have a little chat about what you think of it. But until next time, I will catch you later. Bye bye.